Okay, good morning and a very warm welcome to In Conversation. This is the fifth one in the series wherein I invite some of these eminent personalities to come and discuss about certain things that we want to discuss. And this is a great opportunity for a lot of people who want to learn something new, students, entrepreneurs, professionals. It's to kind of linking to everyone that is there. So this time I have a great opportunity of working with somebody whom I look up to as a mentor. A lot of us look up to him as a very good friend and mentor in our network in BNI. So thank you so much, Ram Seshu, for accepting the invite and coming together with your clan to discuss this topic with us. A very warm good morning to you, Ram. And thank you so much, Maitri and Rolf, for joining us today morning in this session. Let me just give you a quick intro on these panelists that we have here. Ram, as I know, has been an advertising Mughal for quite a long time. He had his long tenure with MAA Bozell for a very long time, and his last designation there was as a chief operating officer. And then he moved on and started his passion into a business which is Born to Win, and he's an author and the founder on Born to Win, where he helps a lot of entrepreneurs ensure that they do the conditioning, as Ram calls it, and work on that conditioning and ensure that they are successful in life. So a very warm welcome to you, Ram, to this In Conversation with Manoj as part of the School of Public Speaking. Good morning, Ram.
Good morning, Manoj. Love to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Wonderful. So Maitri is a creative director at 22 Feet in the content division. She has over 8 years of experience in digital and mainline advertising. She worked on a long list of brands across e-commerce, mobility, F&B, fashion, and technology. Maitri leads 2 teams and helps brands build their way into hearts and minds of consumers with social media content creation, brand campaigns, digital transformation pieces. Welcome, Maitri, to this discussion. We are going to hear a lot of new age advertising from you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Maitri. Rolf is the creative director at Digtas LBI Bangalore, where he leads a team of young writers and designers to deliver digital-first ideas. He has over 14 years of experience both in mainland and digital advertising. Welcome, Rolf, to the In Conversation series. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let me put all of you on spotlight so that the members can see you as well as we discuss this. Okay. So the format we are going to follow is that we'll have a very candid discussion here, and after that, I will also open it up to some of the questions that the audience might have at some point of time. And Sandhya and Neha might help me with those questions as it comes in, and then we will ask you those questions. We'll try to wind it up in an hour's time at the best. If it goes a little longer, it's perfectly fine. I don't think audience will have an issue with that. So let me ask this first to Ram, because this is something that I want to hear a lot. I've heard a little bit of it at some point of time, Ram. I want to know your, and I'm sure all of them want to know your journey into advertising. So how did it happen? Was it a chosen path? How did it happen? And how was your journey in advertising?
All right. Thank you, Manoj. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to be here. And to be with Maitri and Rolf is fantastic. No, Manoj, it wasn't a chosen path at all. It was completely by accident. Mind you, we're now talking of 1982, 83. I don't know how many of you were born at that time, but it was purely by accident. And I think there was a large public gathering in which some of you who don't know me very well, I have this penchant for making a mess of life. And I made a mess of myself in that gathering, and I took on the organizers and started arguing with them. So I kind of attracted the attention of a couple of people who came and told me, why don't you join advertising? And I had no clue about advertising or what happens there. But there were 2 things that really influenced my mind. The first one was that, they said you'll have to do a lot of research and planning and stuff like that. That was the bait. But I think the convincing part was that advertising is full of young models, and I'll get a chance to meet some young, pretty girls and spend some good time with them. And I thought, what a great way to have fun and also, earn a living. And my wife now and girlfriend then was not in Bombay. So it was a good time. It was a good decision to join advertising.
Okay. So an accidental advertiser, is that what you call yourself, Ram?
Absolutely. Because you see, I had a boss called Bal Munkar, who very famously once made a statement to me and to so many of us that, if you can't get a job anywhere else, then you should get into advertising. And I'm talking of those days, not now.
Okay. Let's see what Rolf has to say about that. Rolf, how was your journey? How did it start, Rolf?
So unfortunately, mine isn't as exciting as Mr. Seshu's journey. For me, I actually kind of got introduced to advertising thanks to my sister. She was working with Ogilvy, and while she was in the events team at Ogilvy, I happened to, during that time, meet a lot of her friends when I was here on holiday. And advertising seemed like a fun way to be on the internet and, surfing the internet all day long. I didn't quite realize a lot of the challenges that would come, along the way with the clients and things. But so far, so good.
Okay. So you were not there for the models.
I didn't know about the models at that time. If I did, I'd probably be there for the models.
Okay. Maitri, I'm sure you didn't go for that, but what was your journey about, Maitri? How was it?
Mine was completely different. I studied advertising. I interned. I knew exactly what I was getting into. I think subconsciously, thanks to my father, who's also on the panel, I've been kind of, I know what advertising was. It was always around me. But I went to MICA. I studied copywriting over there. I did an internship at JWT, and I really knew and I loved the idea of, especially as a writer, right? The fact that you get paid to think. So I thought that was amazing. So yeah, that was my journey in that.
So was it influence that dad was in advertising and then you saw it up and then you said, hey, I want to do this as well? Is
Not really. Actually, I knew from the time I was in 7th grade that I wanted to be a writer. And I was just trying to figure out what kind of writing that I wanted to do. So I explored like an internship in journalism, and then I did an internship in an advertising agency, which is JWT. And just the culture and the energy and the fact that there's so much of creativity and everything around you. And yeah, I mean, that was amazing. I mean, you create something out of nothing, right? So it's what pulled me in.
Okay. The other day when I was having a discussion with Ram, he was suggesting that he actually wanted you to be a lawyer. So were you aware of that?
I think he would have liked me to do anything else other than join advertising.
Okay, now let me ask Rolf this question. Rolf, what excites you in advertising? Because you guys are still in advertising. Ram has moved out to follow his passion. So what excites you in advertising as an advertiser?
For me, I think it's the opportunity to sort of try and do something different or something new with every, client brief or launch or problem that's thrown your way, which is one of the sort of reasons why I got into advertising. And I didn't want to, that's sort of the reason I chose it, because I didn't want to be doing the same thing, constantly every day. I wanted to have the opportunity to try different things, also like when the shoots get to travel a little bit, which unfortunately doesn't happen too much right now. But that was sort of the reason, the attempt at trying to do something different every day.
Okay. And you still get to do that, something different every day, even today?
On most days, okay. Not every day.
14 years down and you still get to do that. That's amazing. So even if it is not up to what it was, but if it is still happening, it's great, right, Rolf?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Maitri, what is that excites you in advertising today?
I think it's creativity with a direction. So advertising is all about problem solving. So it's not about, it's not art for art's sake, right? But it is, you're actually affecting change, and you're actually creating something that has a purpose to serve for brands or audiences or whoever you're doing. And I think that's very interesting. I think the entire the entire process of cracking a campaign or a brief for the client, right? And that's where you feel like there's always something new, just like what Rolf said, because every client is different. Every message that you put out there is different. The way you talk to your audiences could also be different. So it's very interesting to find innovative and new ways to kind of communicate and put messages out there.
Okay. Ram, I also want to ask you this question because you spent quite a lot of time there. And what kept you going? As because you're not somebody who wanted to get into advertising. You got in there and you had a long tenure there, headed one of the biggest companies. So what kept you going there? What was the excitement?
Advertising, Manoj, then, and I guess even now, from whatever I've been talking to Maitri and Rolf, I think, advertising is the quintessential ideas business. So we're in the ideas business. I mean, advertising is in the ideas business. And I think what got me going is, I think as Rolf put it, is that, every day you get to work on a new problem, you get a new challenge, you try and solve clients' communication problems. And it is so interesting, that what kept me going for 22 years was, the fact that you have the power to create a perception about a brand, and you've got you have the power to influence customers to go and check out the brands that you're working on. And I think that really kept me going for 22 long years.
Ram, for 3 decades that you've been there, or maybe you've been observing that segment industry, I'm very sure you've seen all the changes that have happened. How you started off then, and where advertising is standing today. I think it's not even a 360-degree. I think it will be much more than what you can call in terms of a flip. It is actually turned upside down. So how do you see that change, Ram? What was then? What was today?
I think today people are far more hardworking. Yeah, I don't think we work half as hard as these guys are doing right now. So let me tell you that I have the greatest admiration for not only Maitri and Rolf, but also all the other people other young people in BNI who are still working in the communication space. I have a lot of admiration because they really, really work very, very hard. I mean, their work is intense. We didn't work half as hard. Let me be honest with you. Uh, it wasn't as competitive, Manoj. Life is not so competitive. Life was a little more genteel at that time. Even amongst the ad agency, we competed against each other for clients and for business, but we were a little more genteel. We were a little more. We didn't work half as hard. And mind you, I had people when I joined the first company that I worked with, Spear, and then FCB Ulka, where I spent a long time. I had people who were working in the agency's business from 1960, 1970. So, when you're talking about, it's now almost, I'm seen this business now for about 50, 60 years, quite literally. There was no information at that time. There was no media at that time. Television had just started. I was one of the first people who got advertising onto television. We put on. So it was pretty much like the Wild West, quite honestly. Nothing there, no systems, nothing at all. So you're going and discovering stuff and making things and getting things to work. So it was a great amount of fun. And so today, I see today, for instance, these people, they work far, far too hard, according to me. But, and clients also at that time were a little more considerate, to our faults and our foibles, and no communication, no internet. You can imagine. I mean, the way I'm talking now, it almost makes me seem like a bloody fossil. Yeah. I know. I think I'm going to give you the fossils perspective, and these two young people are going to give you the tomorrow's perspective, Manoj.
That was idea, Ram. That was idea. Rolf, how do you see the change? I mean, I think 15 years itself is pretty much a change in that industry. So how do you see that change happen over the last 15 years?
I think in the sense it's quite similar to what Ram was saying in terms of I think there's a lot more these days, right? Like what's changed from back when, even when I started, which is not that long ago, is the number of brands, the number of agencies, the number of people, right? Which just means that, and the audience is also growing, but I don't think the audience has grown at the same pace as the brands and the agencies, right? As well. So you've got more brands vying for people's attention, which means that while it presents the challenge of how does every brand kind of differentiate itself, it also, that's where the opportunity lies to kind of create an interesting campaign or an interesting sort of strategy for your brand itself.
Okay, okay, interesting. So let me ask this to Maitri once. Maitri, where is advertising heading now? As an industry, where is it heading?
That's a loaded question. But I think it's heading more towards big. I think brands are trying to become personalities that their audiences want to engage with and talk to, right? I mean, today, advertising, just by the sheer number of mediums that you can kind of be present on as a brand, you're no longer putting up a message over there and then expecting the audience to listen and either accept it or move on, right? Today, it's a two-way conversation that brands are having with their audiences. So advertising is actually getting into a space where brands need to start creating a personality that seems appealing for audiences to follow, to engage with, to look out for. So they're not just these companies anymore, right? They have opinions today. They have conversations. They take up causes. They do a lot more than just saying, "Hey, this is my product. Go buy it." Right? And so it's getting into a space where there's a lot more content creation and it's also creating experiences for the audience. So that's where it's moving.
Okay. I remember when I started my sales journey, and I was in Tamil Nadu at that point of time. The biggest line item for me in my marketing and advertising campaign was wall paintings. That was a single largest line item for us to kind of do it. I don't see it anymore, and I'm sure you have been through that journey, wherein you said TV started, radio started, a bit of digital started. Now it's unknown. We don't even know where that is. So do you have any thoughts on where it is heading, Ram? As an industry, as advertisers, as advertising professionals, where are we heading? Because I'm very sure a lot of kids are listening to this and their parents are listening to this and they want to listen to it later also to look at it as a career as well. So where are we heading in terms of an industry? You're muted, Ram, sorry.
Advertising, to my mind, is the career that a young person should consider, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that. It is pure ideas as a business. Okay, so the idea part of advertising, like Rolf said or Maitri said, is never going to go away, whatever be the form that we're going to get into. And like you said, Manoj, you did wall paintings and hoardings, and it keeps evolving, it keeps changing. But at the core of the business is an idea. And if there is anybody out there as a young person who wants to think of advertising as a career, then you must take it up. Communications, advertising, the entire gamut of it, actually, not just advertising alone. Advertising is perhaps the poster boy for the entire communications business, but then you need to get into that. So where it is headed is that we're going to get even more specific in terms of the kind of ideas that we want, the kind of brands that are going to come. And the upside is huge, Manoj. The upside is really, really very, very, very large. It's a huge upside that we're going to be looking at, primarily because there are so many brands which are waiting to come out. So you're going to see a lot more local brands being advertised. You're going to see a lot more local kind of media that is going to come. So it's going to be a great career for anybody who's willing to work hard and who's willing to stand up for their ideas and work with their ideas. So if there are any of these people who are watching, I would recommend this without a shadow of doubt, because it's a great line to be in, it's a great profession to be in, and the sky is the limit in this business.
Maitri is smiling hearing that, because as she said on record that you did not want her to be in this industry, and now you're recommending all other children to be there. That's what all dads do, Maitri. Don't worry about that. Yeah. Rolf, what are your thoughts, Rolf? Where are we heading?
I think very similar to what Uncle was saying over there. In terms of the number of, the way it's evolving, right? Advertising is essentially, if you like what you had said as well, right? From wall paintings to maybe TV to everything else, it's essentially creating a need for a product. There's more and more there's more and more products, more services, more brands that are waiting to kind of come into the limelight. And I think they're just, it's going to keep going where the audience is, right? Today with digital, you're able to kind of reach out to an audience on so many more platforms, right? Whether it's social media, and social media itself has become such a wide kind of spectrum as well, right? It's, I mean, if you've gotten a brand or a service, it has to be kind of, people don't get to know of it unless it's put out there, right? Which is essentially advertising. If you had to kind of strip down the formal info, so it's gonna keep happening. I just think the mediums that we use will keep evolving and keep kind of changing. TV, while digital has become really really big now, I think TV is still plays quite an important role. It's just the way people use TV has kind of changed, right? So earlier it was 1 minute long ads on TV. That's come down to, if you look at the IPL break, where you have about 15 or 20 seconds to kind of get out your the information over there. So it's going to keep happening. It's just that the format, I think, will keep changing. The mediums will keep changing.
Okay. So what I understand from all three of you is that the advertiser as a core will remain there. The mediums might change, the opportunities will change, the platforms will change, but the person who's creating the advertiser will remain as it is what you're saying. Is that right? What I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Now, this is for the benefit of a lot of advertising professionals who are here. So there are BNI guys who are watching, who have been in advertising for a long time as entrepreneurs or professionals. As these changes happen over a period of time, right, from your newspaper medium to today digital, and tomorrow I don't even know what we are going to see. How do these people keep upskilling themselves? What are the things that they need to do to keep themselves in the race? Because otherwise, you will essentially become not the fossil that Ram said, but an actual fossil in that industry. So what are the things that they need to do to keep themselves abreast in terms of what is happening in that industry? Maitri, would you want to answer that question, please?
Sure. I mean, there's no set, kind of checklist that one should do, but it is a factor of being present where your audience is, right? Like today, the audience that we're talking to, a lot of, depending on whichever brand you have, if your audience is, let's say, the new Gen Z, that's basically the youngest generation that we're talking to. What are they doing? Where are they? Look at the platforms that they are on, right? Is there something, because today advertising is becoming all about how seamlessly can I, give out a message in a platform without making it seem like, hey, I'm a brand, I'm here, hello, and all of that, right? So you don't want to do that anymore. So I think knowing the platforms that people are on is really important. Also, today it's all about influencers. I mean, one of the biggest things, like a lot of kids today want to grow up and become YouTubers or Instagram influencers, because Instagram influencers and all of that are creating content, and that is being heavily consumed, right? So to know the kind of people who are the influencers for that particular generation, what kind of content is being consumed, and looking at your brand from that lens, whether over there or not. And another thing, of course, is that what every Indian loves to do, which is look at what people are doing abroad, look at what's happening at the award functions at Cannes, at what's winning at one show, what's winning at DNAD, and because those things actually open up your perspective on different mediums and how you can kind of play with it, right? So I I personally love the fact that you can relate, right? So I think that's something that's really important, knowing the medium and knowing what is working with this audience.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ram, what are your thoughts? Because you are somebody who's working at upskilling people, not just from the entrepreneurial side, from the advertising side, but generically. So from an advertising perspective, an entrepreneurial perspective, a professional perspective, what are the areas that a person should keep upskilling about? Because with all these changes, I'm very sure upskilling is the key word here.
I think, one of the things that hasn't really changed, as I said, from then till now, is the fact that it is still an ideas business. So it's very, very important that you start developing those insights. You develop this ability to shift the shaft from the grain, as it were, and figure out what is the motivath, what is the core idea. So the one of the skills that you need to develop in addition to the hard work that I mentioned earlier, is the ability to dig deep, the ability to persevere. I think you just need to go, you need to do that, and figure out how can you make that distinction between what the client is telling you and what the customer wants. Sometimes the client would tell you what he or she would like to hear, but it is the customer really who makes that decision in the marketplace. And therefore you need to spend that time. You need to figure out what is it that the customer wants, what is the customer looking for. And it's not really market research, but curiosity. That's another thing that you really, really need to work on. So curiosity, perseverance, the ability to dig deep. I think these are the kind of skills that you really, really require. And amongst all the young people that we meet, that we talk about, whether it's through our programs or whatever, I find that these are skills that people are working on day in and day out, and they can really do that. And I guess finally, looking at the kind of work that you do, Manoj, the ability to express yourself. Okay, you may have a great idea, but then you need to express yourself. You need to put it out there in the market. You need to tell people what your ideas are. And I think these are the kind of things that are very important.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ram, for that. Rolf, so now that these are the upskilling things that people need to work on, how do we do it? How do they do it? What is your advice to people who want to really upskill and keep themselves updated with what is happening in that industry? How do they go ahead and do upskilling, Rolf?
So I think the advantage that a lot of people have today versus how it was maybe 5, 10, 20 years back is the tools and the access that you have. Right, the internet has kind of created this sort of democracy of information. Right, it's you've got, when it comes to, if you want to look at it at a very top level, where it's just kind of making yourself familiar with the kind of advertising that the kind of ads, whether it's TV, print, whatever that is. You've got loads of websites where you can go and consume that information. If you look at upskilling, there's a lot of online courses that give you, which will teach you about how to mine for insights, how to sort of, if you're looking at upskilling when it comes to writing and things like that, there's a lot of access. There's a lot of information out there which you now easily have access to. If you're looking at, and of course, the beauty of the whole thing is when you work in an agency, you have people right from the top level, which is your leadership all the way down, will also help impart that information to you and kind of direct you in the right way. But I think the big change that, or the advantage that we have these days, is the access to all of this information. So if you have the curiosity and you want to learn, it's very easy to find all of this.
Fantastic. Okay. The other thing which I wanted to kind of know is, especially from Maitri and Rolf, that you guys are in the industry currently, how is the life of an advertising professional? Because Ram gave us a little bit of a scare that you guys work a lot, unlike earlier days. So how is life as an advertising professional today, Maitri?
It is a lot. See, I think it is hard work. I think gone are the days where it was all about the models and the shoots and stuff like that. So it is a lot of hard work. It is a very stressful industry, right? Because it is a demanding industry. And I think the entire point is that, are you having fun, navigating through different needs and demands that different brands may have? Are you kind of finding the fun in cracking those briefs, right? A lot of times what will happen is that this industry, to be honest, is an industry where you work long hours. Your working timings are a little different, especially with the pandemic. The entire beauty of the culture of advertising, sitting together, jamming together, as we call it, when you're cracking ideas or briefs or whatever, that is unfortunately not there anymore. Like we're divided by screens, and you basically just kind of hear a person, or you're only talking about work. So the culture unfortunately is compromised at this time, but um, it is a constantly evolving thing. So it is chaotic and it is madness. And if you like that kind of if you like that kind of energy around, this is a great place to be. And I think also what is happening today and is that advertising agencies are becoming really conscious about the people that are there, and mental health, and their working timings and things like that. So a lot of agencies are putting it in place where there is subsequent time to recharge, because one of the things that's really important, especially for creative people in advertising, is to switch off of work, because you only get your ideas and your insights when you actually go out there and interact and do anything else other than constantly working. So it's all about developing a passion, or being exposed to different different things. It could be movies, it could be gardening, it could be cooking, it doesn't matter, right? So yeah, so that's also something that's that even agencies are kind of being a little conscious about today.
Okay. So before I go to Rolf, when I was working, we shared an office with an advertising agency. So the next office was an advertising agency, and we were those guys who had to wear the white shirts and the red ties and the gray pants and walk in formals every time. And then you look up to these guys, and they'll be standing outside in their shorts and flip flops and t-shirts. And I'm talking about good old days when shorts was still a night dress; it was never worn outside, and we were not even allowed to wear jeans, and we were looking up to these guys and say, hey, something is wrong with those guys. This can't be normal. And then the boss would come and say, hey, never get influenced by these guys. We are never going to have that kind of a dress code in our office. Rolf, what are your thoughts on if you want to add anything to the advertiser's journey today in terms of the life that you have in office?
Sure. So I think one of the reasons I forgot to mention, one of the reasons why I also joined advertising was so I wouldn't have to go to work in a uniform. But yeah, to add to what Maitri is saying, I think yes, it is. There are times where it's stressful. The beauty is that today, I think a lot of agencies, if not all of them, have been sort of forced to evolve in a way where you are looking out for your people a lot more, right? Whether it's sort of helping them out with resources when it comes to mental health and things like that, or even during the pandemic, there's been a lot of chaos. So we've all had kind of our HRs reaching out to us and things like that. But I think the real sort of thing is that it's going to be, I mean, while the rewards are great at times, it is going to be demanding. Pretty much like every other job, right? It does have, there are the stressful days, there are the great days also. And like Maitri was saying, it comes down to you enjoying what you do. I think when you really enjoy what you do, working on a weekend or staying a couple of hours later doesn't become that much of a compromise, because you see the work that or the ideas that you're coming up with take shape, and maybe it's in the form of a TV commercial, or maybe it's in the form of a print ad or whatever it is, but you see the rewards in front of you, right? But yes, it is stressful, and I think it's it does have its good days and its bad days.
Okay. So this question is for the students who are here, because I know some of them, part of my public speaking program, are also following this as we talk. So, what education should somebody follow to get into advertising? Is there any particular right from your high school? So for example, a high school student wants to get into advertising. So, what is the course for him or her, Maitri?
So I can tell you what I had done, right? And this is a little skewed towards becoming a creative person, especially if you are interested in doing the writing aspect of it. So, but I think this also works even if you want to get into the strategy or the servicing angle of it, right? Um, there are many divisions, so it depends on where you really lie. I hate numbers, so I didn't want to do anything other than arts, really. But what really helped me, even before I did the course at MICA, was the fact that I had done a triple major with psychology, English literature, and communication, right? And I think that if even if you were to take the English literature aside, the very fact that communication and psychology is such a great mix to do, because you in advertising, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with your clients, you're dealing with other departments that you kind of work together with, and you're also dealing with consumers at the end of the day, right? And it is important to find those insights. So I think that is really interesting to do. There are a lot of great communication-led mass comm kind of courses that a lot of people are doing. But if you do want to kind of specialize, if you are on track and if you feel like this is your course, this is your set course, then MICA offers great programs both from post graduation, which is your MBA kind of programs, as well as your creative programs as well, right? So I had done the creative program over there. And of course, doing an MBA is something that definitely helps, especially if you want to get into the servicing aspect of it, which is the business side, and or move into the strategy side as well. And if you're doing a creative course, depends on what you want to do. It's kind of it's a little specific, because if you look at the creative department, there's art, there's production, there's copy. So a lot of people come in from schools like Shrishti or JJ School of Arts and stuff like that, right? So in the creative department, it's very important to get your basics right, right? If you're a writer, you should know your language. If you're a designer, you should know your art. That comes first and foremost, because these are specifics over there. So actually, to be honest with you, anybody can join advertising. There are a bunch of engineers who decide that, this is not my cup of tea, and I would like to be a little more creative and do it as well. But if you want to follow a specific path, there are places like North Point, there's MICA, there's places like even if you're doing your bachelor programs from your Christ College in Bangalore and things like that, to even Xavier's in Mumbai. All of these guys have very communication driven courses that people can do.
Fantastic. So Ram, one of the ideas I'm getting is that anybody can be an advertiser, and that Maitri is vouching for that. So there can still be accidental advertisers, is what she's saying, Ram. But I believe that there has to be a spark. There has to be that one thing that is a mandatory thing. It doesn't, not just the certificates that you carry. There needs to be some of those mandatory things that you need to have to be in this business, is what I believe in. What do you think, Ram? What, if at all they are there, what are those things?
Oh, absolutely, Manoj. I think, then and now, there is no doubt about the fact that, as I said, I got into advertising purely by accident. But then to survive, to grow, to do what I eventually did in the business, uh, was a lot of work. But I think the one thing that you need to have is curiosity. You need to be very, very curious about life, about what happens, why things work, why things don't work, how to get things to work. You need to have that innate curiosity. If you were to ask me about anything else, you just need to have that curiosity. And then once you do get into the business, you see, I'll also tell you one interesting thing, Manoj. Advertising is perhaps, to me, the most positive environment that you can think of at working in any place, because the support that you get from your colleagues, and I'm sure Rolf would bear me out on that, or Maitri would bear me out on that. The support that you get is fantastic, from your friends, from your colleagues, from, everybody jumps in and is there with you. So it's not a lonely business. It's a very nice business, but then you have to have that innate curiosity to really succeed. Manoj?
Okay. So curiosity is the first part, and from that comes the creativity side. Ram, is that what you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for instance, whenever I would look for a creative person, when I was hiring those days, and some of the people who work with me today are uh, really, really at the top of the heap all over the world from a creative perspective. I would really, really look for people who are very curious, who would just not accept life as it is, who would ask those searching questions. Because somewhere in there is that little nugget that is buried, so you must have that curiosity to go after that little nugget and discover that nugget, because that is what the customer is looking for. Ultimately, advertising is a service. It is bridging a gap. It is bridging the is bridging is building a bridge between what a customer wants, and it always starts with the customer. It's never the client, never the product. It's always the customer. It's what does the customer want? What is the customer looking for? What is it that she thinks that her life is going to become better? That's important. So you must have that curiosity to dig into that and find out, how can my product or service make her life better? So you must have that.
You used a feminine for a customer. Is that by purpose, Ram?
Oh yes, very early in life, we were taught that there's a very famous statement, Manoj, very, very famous statement saying, don't ever call the customer a moron, because she may be your wife.
Okay. So the decision makers are on that side. Okay, wonderful. Rolf, connecting these two. So one is the journey in terms of education. Second is the innate qualities that the person should have. What are the avenues available in advertising? Because this is a huge industry, and there are so many things that a person can do. So what are the major avenues that are available for a person who wants to pursue advertising as a career?
So just if I get your question right, when you're talking about avenues, you mean in terms of whether it's digital or mainline? That's good. Oh, sure. So I think actually, just before I do that, I just want to add on to what you were discussing before this. I think the curiosity bit is an absolute, and one thing that people should remember is that the curiosity and the creative sort of penchant is important, regardless of whether you're in the creative department or you're in the account management team, because ultimately, advertising sort of is the business of creating creative solutions, right, for brands. So even if it's coming up, even if the person who's cracking the brief in terms of, what the client brief is to the creative brief and the creative team, or whether it's the technology solution, you need to have that sort of curiosity, and it has to have a little bit of a creative spark in it. Sorry, just back to
Yeah, please.
what you were saying. I think nowadays earlier it was mainline advertising, so it was largely print, your hoardings, your TV, and things like that. Now advertising has opened up so much, right? Which is also a result of all the mediums that you can be present on, right? Um, so there's the mainline advertising, which is still alive and kicking. I don't think they're going down anytime soon. There is digital marketing, so your digital agencies, which is where I kind of work currently. It's everything online. Largely, you're talking to consumers on social media. You will also find PR is also one sort of side stream to advertising. Then, of course, there's content marketing, right? There's influencer marketing. There are agencies that specialize just in that. One of my previous jobs, I worked with a company that was trying to focus more on content rather than advertising. It's called Wavemaker, which is part of Group M. And there we were not, so we weren't creating, if we were creating videos, we weren't creating the typical TVC style video where, you were everything was centered around the product. It was more storytelling and, trying to see how we can seamlessly fit the product into what it was. So, there's, if I can just sum up, mainline digital, there's PR, there's content marketing, there's influencer marketing. And these days, if you look at a lot of the younger generation, they're creating content on their own. You don't, if you've got the sort of drive to do it, you don't even have to get into a particular agency. You'll see loads of these content creators, across the different mediums. You have some who are specific to, you create content only for a YouTube, some who create, for an Instagram and things like that. So I think it's a little difficult to name, to pin down the exact avenues, but I think it's just constantly evolving, it's growing. And with the tools that you have, anyone can do it these days, as long as you've got, the drive and you've got the inclination to it.
So my daughter happens to be one of them who's creating content.
Amazing.
So she was supposed to be in this panel, but she's stuck into something else today. So she has excused herself.
Creating content right now.
So interesting. So Maitri, anything that you want to add? But I also have another question apart from that. So once inside an agency, what are the roles inside there? So just like there are guys who are developing content, there are guys who are doing sales, there are guys who are doing. So what are the larger roles inside an agency?
So if you look at a mainline agency, and by mainline we mean you look at, let's say, your main mediums become your outdoor hoardings, your print advertising, your TVCs, right? The old, the thing that we all know, which is your TV commercials, right? In an agency like that, you have a business division, all right? So they're called, which is called servicing or account management, where they are responsible for dealing with clients, finding out what the client problems are or what the client needs, and then they kind of crack a brief and give it to the creative team that then takes it and comes up with the idea, right? You have a strategy team. The strategy team also picks out a lot of insights and basically does stuff like focus groups, finding out what are the cultural insights, how can my brand be related, finding a brand positioning, those kind of things. I'm just saying that, this team does it, but it's generally an effort that a lot of people come together. But if you were to kind of put it in silos, that would be what each team would do, right? So you have a strategy team, you have the account management team, you have a creative team which has art and copy, right? So copy are the people who do the writing part of it, art are the people who design the entire campaign and things like that. You have a studio team. The studio team is actually they are the reason why a lot of ads can go in a lot of places, right? They also are designers, but basically they do everything from adapting creatives into different sizes so that they can go everywhere. So you've got the studio team, you've got a media team. The media team, and now you have separate media agencies as well. They are responsible for identifying the placement of your campaign, right? So what are the different real estates that the brand can kind of buy to put their message on it, right? Now, when you move into digital, it's the same teams are there. It's just that the medium is different. So the media team would be looking at real estate on your digital platform. So you've got, whether it is website, Google, search, those kind of things, social media, all of that, right? And we also have, in the digital agencies, you also have a tech team. So you've got a front end, a back end, a UX, UI, a mobile team. So that's also really interesting because this has kind of opened up an avenue for people who are into development, right? So a lot of developers come, right? And both Rolf and I, the agencies that we work in, have a very, very significant and a large tech team that help. So, they also help with any sort of innovations that you want to do, because like I was saying, it's all about creating experiences. So you want to do something with augmented reality or virtual reality, and you want to create an experience for that. Or is it something to do with building a website, any features you want to add on the website for the brands? All of that becomes a tech, encompasses in the entire tech team that has many subdivisions under it as well.
Thanks. That puts a light on for a lot of people who are looking at this as a career, because it is not just about writing. There are so many other things that
there's literally a place for, like, there are many options even within advertising, right? There's even a there's also something called a community management team, right? They're the ones that actually keep the entire social media part going. They kind of look at how the brand is performing on social media, the kind of engagement that they get, how are the people responding to that. So, there are a lot of subdivisions and avenues for a person to be. It's not just about writing or designing or cracking the idea. It's not just that anymore.
Okay. Rolf, and from all that Maitri was saying, do people move inside? I mean, once you're a creative, is it that you're a creative guy for the rest of your life and you retire as a creative guy? Is that how it is, or do people often change the roles that they're playing?
No, absolutely. I think I think the great thing about it is that because it's all sort of interconnected, right? While your specialization, of course, might be writing or might be the design aspect. In the past few years, I've seen people evolve their roles, right? And I'm sure you would have seen this as well, right? Where you'll have a lot of agency, creative department leaders who kind of rise up the ladder and then move into production, right? Film production, things like that. I've seen a lot of designers who sort of evolve from being, graphic designers into UI UX designers. And at the same time, you also meet some people who started off in client servicing and now do, copywriting or design. So I think it's pretty limitless, and I think there's a lot of agencies today who are happy because the thing is, at the end of the day, it's the talent that they're looking for, right? So if you bring something to the table and that something is of great significance and helpful to the agency, if you want to move from one department to another, as long as you're able to kind of learn on the job a little bit and bring that value, I think agencies are also happy to sort of help that change happen, right? Because at the end of the day, one of the things that, and I know Maitri goes through this as well a lot, is finding talent, right? Um, is a huge issue for agencies, finding the right kind of talent. So one, to answer your question in terms of moving within the agency, yes, I think it happens a lot. Agencies are happy to do it because they're able to kind of retain the talent. And I think it's sort of a natural progression also for a lot of us, right? Where over time you're developing your skills a little bit more, and you kind of feel a little bit, more towards a certain specialization or a certain department, right? It happened with me. I was in, I started off in mainline advertising, and the more I got exposed to digital, whether it was through social media, I didn't consciously do it because I wanted to get into digital advertising. It was just that the medium seemed to come to me a little bit more naturally. So I realized that, it's easier for me to create work on these mediums. So that's why I made the switch.
Wonderful. Okay, so that brings to my other business, which is into recruitment, and that's a space that I've been working for the last 14 years, and I've hired quite a lot of guys from advertising side also. One of the things that I've seen, and I don't know if it is true to all agencies, or all professionals, I've seen two kind of people. One who stay there, probably retire there, and they've been there in the same agency and they spend donkey years in the same agency. The second one are people who are like jumping jacks. I mean, I really do not. I mean, their resume is one and a half pages. In that half a page is completely in the names of agencies that they've worked in. Have you seen that? Because when you're saying that there is a dearth of talent available there, do you also see that retention and then people moving out is a major issue? And if it is there, why does it happen so often? Rag?
Absolutely agree with you on that. In fact, on LinkedIn the other day, I was reading Pratap Sutan, who's one of the managing partners at Bang in the Middle. He put up this post about how he was interviewing, I think, for a senior copywriter. And the resume that he saw was the person had jumped agencies I think in about a span of 2 years or 3 years, had worked at about 15 agencies. Right? And he made a very good observation over there, saying that, of course, the reasons very often are that, you're not happy with the kind of work that you're able to do, or, you don't get the kind of brands that you want to work in when what you have in mind before you get into it when you join there. Um, but I think at the end of the day, there are two things that for me, when I look at it, when I get a resume, that there are two things that I look at. One is, um, I'm not. I first sort of look at the talent that the person brings to the table. I'm primarily interviewing for creative resources, so I look at the resume or the portfolio that comes along with the resume. At the same time, I kind of try and understand the reason for the shift, right? I think at the end of the day, uh, because there are so many agencies, it's easy for you to move from one agency to another. Because of the dearth of talent, agencies need to hire people. But the reasons for moving are important. And honestly, for me, as long as I see the talent and I know I'm able to give that the person, something, there's going to be something exciting for them to work on in the agency. I do not judge them entirely by their resume.
Okay. Okay. So Ram was saying that the first thing that he looks up to in a person was curiosity when he comes or interviews that person. What is that one thing that Maitri you look up to in that person?
I just wanted to add a point to the
Sure.
jumping aspect as well. See, I genuinely believe that if somebody is constantly moving within 3 months or 2 months and those kind of things, then yeah, that is a little bit of a red flag. But I would actually go the other way and encourage people to explore when they're starting out. And I think that if you've done 1 year at a place, it is well within it is in your best interest, and it is within your right to actually see if there are better opportunities over there. Of course, you'll only know whether a place works for you if you've been there long enough and you've given it enough of a chance. But I would say that when you're young, you have you can take that call of shifting maybe every year. Okay. I don't know who's going to get upset listening to this when it's live on social media, but I would say that you can do that. But then there comes a time once you've got about 3 or 4 years of experience where you are being perceived for a different kind of role. You're not being looked at as a junior person who's coming here to work and learn, right? You're also being looked at as somebody who could probably impart that knowledge. And I think that is when it's really key for you to be somebody who sticks around and who can actually, hold something together for, 2, 3, 4 years and things like that, right? So I think when you join and you want to explore, know that there is a time for everything, and then there is also a time to kind of, move up even for yourself, right? To unlock the next step in your career, you need to kind of know what to do. So that was the point for that. And I'm sorry, in the process of answering this, I forgot the question.
No worries. That helps.
I think, sorry, just before you continue, just to kind of also add to what Maitri was saying, I think the reason agencies today look at the kind of time, the time spent at an agency by an individual who's kind of looking out, exactly like what Maitri said, right? At a junior level, it doesn't matter if you moved around too much. As you climb up the ladder, you will want to have people who stick around for longer, simply because the agency, as you start moving up, the agency start investing in you in terms of, training you, in terms of the opportunities they throw your way and things like that. And then it just becomes, the agencies are at a disadvantage if you're going to go there, get that training, and then, a few months or very quickly jump ship again.
Okay. Maitri, coming back to the question, whom will you hire?
What do I look for?
What is that one thing that you look up to when you're hiring someone?
So one of the things that I look for is how. So honestly, the first thing that you look at, especially for a creative person, is their portfolio and their profile and things like that. You want to see the kind of work that they've done. but it's also, especially in the interview process, you want to actually see what their attitude is, how excited are you about this, right? A lot of people come into advertising because they think it's easy money, but they don't realize that it's also hard work. You get, of course there's money, but it comes at hard work. So how interested are you in what you're signing up for? That's one thing. And I like to know if they have been in advertising for a while. I like to know their process. I like to, because a lot of people, again, because there are so many divisions, to think that, okay, I'm a creative person, I'm just going to write, you come to me with all the information. The entire aspect of, am I doing my research? Am I interested in insights, which also stems from that whole bit of being a little curious. Also, how much do you really want it, right? How passionate are you about the work that you're doing? Because while it's under the tag of advertising, you're still creating things that people, you're still creating something that potentially has the option to be remembered, right? If you look at some of the best campaigns that we still kind of, they've made their way into pop culture. So I don't think it's, acha, it's just for a brand and, you're doing something and you're getting out of it. You have that opportunity to actually create something that people will talk about, that becomes a part of culture, and that also can shape, change perception at times, right? So that's what I look for. I look for passion. I look for their attitude, whether they've got the right attitude, and how, curious, or rather how much do they really care about the piece to actually go beyond just what the position says you need to do.
Okay, thank you for that, Maitri. And I have a couple of questions for Ram. I'm going to take it together. So this is more on creativity part, Ram. So one question was on how do you enhance creativity, and second is how do you channelize that creativity? So would you want to take that, Ram? Because I think it's more from a perspective of an advertising professional. How do you enhance your own creativity, and how do you channelize that creativity?
Well, Manoj, I wish, but I'm going to request Rolf and Maitri to jump in, because the first thing is that, if you want to enhance the way you're creative and what you want to do in life, I think the first thing is to look for the out of the ordinary. Okay, so if you can start looking for out of the ordinary, I think that really helps a lot. Okay, in terms of your own creativity. I mean, my favorite example is the fact that Newton wasn't the first guy who sat under a tree and got bonked by an apple. I'm 100% sure that there must have been thousands of people sitting under thousands of trees and trying to snooze after a good lunch, and an apple comes and hits them on the head, and they curse the apple and they move aside. But here was a guy who said, "Hey, what the hell? I mean, let me give the apple back to you." And along comes the theory of gravity. So the point is that you must have that desire. That's number one. That is one. Two, if you want to channelize the creative, and being creative is not just being in advertising or being a writer or whatever. You can be creative in anything that you actually do. You could be a great cook. You could be could be a great speaker like you, or you could do whatever field that you are in. The important thing is that when you want to channelize that entire that creative uh, spark in you, you need to figure out how are you going to express yourself. What is the channel that you're going to express yourself in. So if you're going to cook something, then how are you going to cook and make sure that it is so appetizing to look at. That so you need to channelize that. You need to figure out, how am I going to give expression to the creative spark that I have within me. I think that really is the important thing. But I'd love to hear from both Rolf and Maitri on what they think.
Rolf, what are your thoughts?
I think, I mean, you have definitely agree with that as well. I think like we just heard, creativity can be anywhere. It doesn't have to just, it doesn't begin and end at an ad agency. You can apply that to anything. In terms of channelizing it, I think as long as it's also a trial and error sort of process. not everyone becomes if you look at advertising, not everyone becomes the best copywriter the first shot, right? You might do that and kind of realize that, hey, you know what, actually I kind of enjoy the client servicing process, right? Or okay, I'll give you my example. I wanted to actually get into design, but I was too lazy to learn the software. So because English came to me naturally, I just became a writer, and I knew I wanted to be in the business of ideas. I think channelizing it really comes down to how you want to do it and the sort of hunger that you have within you. You can channelize it in multiple different ways, right? It could be, through the work you're doing. One of the things that, a lot of bosses, when I was much younger and much more junior, one of the things that a lot of people encouraged us to do is, don't just limit it to what you bring to the table at work. The more you kind of, the content that you're watching, the books that you're reading, the interactions that you're having with people, all of those things, whether it's creating art on the side, whether it's writing something interesting on the side, whether it's music, learning and producing music and things like that. I think there's too many avenues to sort of channelize it. Okay. And of course, there are avenues where, you get paid to do it. So,
okay. Maitri, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we associate creativity with the arts, right? Whether it's music or any sort of artistic expectation of design or writing or whatever. I don't think creativity is only limited to that, right? I think like the example that my dad was talking about, which is even if you're cooking or whatever you're doing, that you can be creative anywhere else, right? So I think that it's I think one of the most important things is that can you actually take two things that don't really belong together and bring them together in a creative way, right? That's if you were to look at the definition of an idea, that's what it is, right? Two things that don't belong together come together, and somehow you've kind of made them fit. You've found a way to kind of bring them together, and that gives you that aha moment. So I think channeling your creativity could be in any aspect of your life. And I don't think people should get too hassled if it's not within the arts aspect of it, right? Because if you do join communications or advertising, regardless of the department, there is a degree of creativity that you bring to the table.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I have a couple of more questions coming in. One of them, okay. So Prem was asking, with AI coming up and it's going to play a big role in digital media marketing and social media marketing. What are the things that one should think or plan while creating an advertisement plan? I think you have a new client coming up here because he's looking at a whole advertising plan here. So Rolf, do you want to quickly answer that one?
Sure. Can you just repeat the question again? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if with AI coming up and it will definitely go and take over a major role in digital media marketing and social media marketing, what are the things that one should plan while creating an advertising plan with AI coming in?
Yeah. So with specifically keeping AI in mind, I think when it comes down to tracking, it's great in tracking things. When it comes down to helping you find insights, the automation part is what sort of where AI will make a huge difference. Just to kind of sidetrack from the question a little bit, when we first heard of AI and AI coming into the field of marketing and communication, a lot of us immediately sort of were worried that they'd come and take over our jobs, but thankfully it didn't. We're still here today. I think AI and what you need to keep in mind when it comes to AI is that AI will not do the work for you, in the sense that it will not come up with the idea for you. It'll help you. Have to still come up with the idea. AI will help you sort of make the idea a little bit more foolproof. It helps you sort of understand where your audience is. It'll help you, with maybe a little bit of data mining. It can help you in certain parts of creativity, but the groundwork and the hard work still needs to sort of be done by you.
Okay. So AI not going to write the content for you. You still have to write the content yourself, is what you're saying.
So the interesting thing is, we had a presentation once with this company called Culture Machine, and that's the presentation that really scared all of us because they introduced us to a system where they, in terms of creating video content. Now, if you look at creation of video content, the way it's traditionally done, the team comes up with a script, it goes back and forth with the client till you finalize what needs to be done. And then, of course, you go into you shoot it, you edit it. Again, there's changes back and forth and things like that, right? So one of the things that when it comes down to video production is the time taken to actually create the output. What Culture Machine was able to do was using the AI that they had created, they were able to kind of figure out which exactly what worked for a particular audience that the brand or the video was catering towards. They helped speed up the process a lot more. They created stuff that would maybe take you a week or 10 days to do. They brought down the time frame that was done, and they helped sharpen the accuracy of it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but you still needed to input in their backend system. You still needed to input information about the audience, about the brand, what you want to do, the look and feel of the brand. And then the AI sort of helps, it does the production work, so to say, and gives you that video output. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Another question that has come up from yeah, please.
Something to the AI bit. Coming from another aspect, right? AI playing a role in digital marketing and social media is I think one of the things that we need to look at as AI as a medium itself. And a lot of brands are adopting artificial intelligence, especially you see a lot of brands creating chatbots and things like that for themselves, so that it's easier to it's easier to keep a communication channel open with your audience. So can you fit AI into your digital marketing plan? Absolutely. I think what makes it interesting is if you, and the entire role of AI is so versatile, right? Like AI helps you come up with, it helps you kind of identify your product also. So you can create an experience where a consumer can kind of, like if you look at tools like Google Vision, right? You or any scannable technology, it's all powered by AI at the end of the day, right? If you look at anything that's doing some sort of text-to-speech interpretation, or if you're doing any sort of predictive text kind of interpretation, or any build like that you want to do for your brand, it's all AI. So AI is a huge, I mean, it's a bigger thing, and it plays a different role depending on where you're utilizing it. So it depends on what you want to really do. Instead, what a lot of times happens is that you look at, okay, this is the technology and I want to use it. I think what's more important is, does this technology make sense for what I want to achieve, right? If I'm communicating with a person, do I need to create, let's say, a chat bot? Do I need to create an experience that needs AI? Do I need to create an experience that needs augmented reality or virtual reality, right? And then if you need to use that technology, then how do you make it seamless with your brand personality, right? I think one of the good examples of it is that if you ever look at any chatbot that's created, it talks to you the way a brand would talk to you, right? If you're using Dunzo or Swiggy or any of that, if you look at them, the languages are really different as well. So, this is a loaded question, but but if you're using it for your campaign, understand that you need to know that it is required for what your brand wants to deliver.
So what I understand, Maitri and Rolf, is that AI is going to be there. It is not going to be a replacement. It is all about you on how you're going to integrate it and work it for the betterment of what you're doing. That's
There are two things. One is using AI for your brand, and one is the fact that AI can come and take over, and the impending threat of AI doing our jobs.
Okay.
Right?
So I have a question from Pratik, who is a passionate photographer, and he is looking at getting into advertising. So he wants to know how much of photography is involved in advertising.
Lots. So much. That's the short answer.
That's a short answer, Pratik, but it's a long answer for you. But I think the clarity is that there is photography involved.
Because it doesn't, because even if it's digital marketing, right, we do need photographers for images. I mean, I think the most important part of for any brand is imagery, right? And even within the realm of photography, you can specialize in the kind of photography that you do. So you can be someone who's like, specifically a food photographer or a fashion photographer or someone who is really great at flat lays, right? And so even the choice of photographer becomes very important in advertising, depending on what kind of creation we want or what our brand is, right? Yeah.
Okay, so that's answered. The other question is from Atif, and I had a bit of a discussion on this earlier. If somebody wants to get into advertising or switch into advertising, where does that person start from? Rolf, would you want to take it?
Sure. So I'll give you from a couple of examples that I've seen. I had a boss, one of my first bosses. He didn't. I mean, I studied visual communication because I knew I wanted to get into advertising, so I was doing it that way. I had a boss who was. I've had quite a few bosses and worked with a lot of colleagues who started off as engineers and moved into advertising. I think it just starts with that curiosity, right? If you have the curiosity and you want to create something, you don't have to. I hope this helps, but you don't need to have a portfolio of work that is actually gone live. You can go to an agency with a portfolio and you say that I've looked at these brands, these are their ads, and I think that this could have been an interesting way to do it instead of what was shown, or maybe this is how I would like to approach it, and things like that. So I don't think there's literally there's nothing that's stopping you. Of course, you will, when you do go there, you will face the questions, the typical thing of when you're entering any industry for the first time, right? If you look at the reverse, right? If you were working in advertising and you wanted to move to an industry that's quite different from advertising, you'd face the same question, saying that what experience do you have? Your experience is only in advertising. You don't have any experience in, say, maybe HR. Okay, I'm just throwing it at the top of my head, right? It's again, it comes down to that curiosity, that eagerness, and the ability to present an argument that would make someone want to kind of take you in, right? So for most people, if it's creative, it's it's important to be able to show the work that you're able to do. Otherwise, maybe you'll have to join a place as an intern and they need to see your work, learn, see the way you think. If you want to get into creative and you're not able to present the way that you think, that's the first sort of challenge, right? You need to present some work. If you want to probably get into the account management side, again, you'll need to show your skills in that field a little bit. Also, I think understanding the knowledge of what you want to get into, right? So if you wanted to get into creative, knowing a little bit more about it and what it requires of you is extremely important, right? A lot of people get into advertising thinking it's the easiest alternative, for someone who's lazy, but somewhere down the line you might find out that it's you're probably going to find out that it's not, and you're not going to enjoy the hard work there.
You're going to find it the hard way then.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I have a question from Premjit, and I don't know who wants to answer this. Is open. Do you visualize the outcome in the beginning itself, or the creativity and connecting the dots just happen during the process? So do you start with the end in sight? Maitri, do you want to take that?
I think so the thing is that since advertising is, at least in the way we do it, right? It's an answer to a brief. So there is a particular objective that needs to be achieved. And based on that, a campaign or anything is cracked. So you do know where you want to go in that sense, right? Now, within the creative process, do you visualize the outcome? So in the creative process, you kind of, you use a lot of elimination and what would work to meet that larger objective. And will the campaign result in something, and will it go viral, or will it be, well, will we have a lot of participation and those kind of things? Those are things that you cross your fingers and you hope for, and you do enough of your planning and stuff like that so that you can kind of reach those numbers. But those are not, you don't start thinking, hoping, with the intention of it performing in a particular way, right? You do what you believe is the best and what you genuinely feel is going to move the, as we say, move the needle for the brand. uh, but yeah, it always starts with what the objective is and what do I want to achieve, or what do I want to communicate. So in that sense.
Thank you, Maitri, for that. I come to the last question that I have, and this is for all of you. Let me start with Rolf. What is that one advice that you will have for anyone, a student or a youngster who's wanting to pursue his career in advertising? What is that one advice you have?
I think it's it's not just advertising. I might give you a slightly open-ended answer here, so I hope it's helpful. But I think it's important for you to know what the business is about. Pretty much like anything, right? When you get into advertising, it's important for you to know what to understand a little bit and know what goes into the whole process and about the process and things like that. Of course, there are a lot of people who get into it accidentally, who enjoy the process along the way. But I think for someone, it's important to know what advertising really is, right? It's because as consumers, very often you're just exposed to the end product, right? Which is either a magazine ad or the television commercial, or it could be the Facebook post or Instagram post that you see, right? It's important to sort of understand, well, not entirely understand, but to know that there's a process behind it, right? And if you want to get into advertising, um, it's important to know that, and to know how that, or to want to know how that process kind of comes together, right? Because you're not, I'll give you an example that I had. I initially, before I got into advertising, I thought that every print ad that you saw was shot by a photographer, right? I didn't know that a lot of it was just stock footage put together and things like that. So it helps to know what you're getting into, which is, I would say, it's probably a principle that you need to keep in mind for any sort of industry that you're gonna get into. And
understand the industry is what you're saying, and understand the process of that industry.
Because it's very easy. I think it's pretty easy to only see one side of it and not understand, like what Maitri was saying earlier, right? It's and the many departments. It's a long process. It's a lot of dots that have to be connected to see that outcome, right? If you're gonna get into it, afresh, thinking that, hey, every day I'm gonna be writing a new TV script, that might not actually come true. So.
Okay.
I mean, if it does, it's great.
Okay.
But it might not always be the outcome. So I think understanding what you're getting into, understanding that there's a process to it. Of course, the journey once you get into it and learning is something that is has to happen, and that's one of the things that I enjoyed about it.
Maitri, what are your thoughts? What is that one advice that you want?
I would say be a sponge. There is a lot of us. We all grow up with we're only exposed to one kind of environment, right? It depends on where we're from, who our parents are, what are their ideologies and things like that. So the thing is that we are always in a cocoon, right? Surrounded by the environment that we've been exposed to. Advertising talks to India, right? And it talks to Bharat. And you will not come with the knowledge of what people are like across the country, right? There are a lot of different experiences and a lot of different things that we would have never even fathomed, right? But you're also talking to them. So I would say that when you first join advertising, you should actually be a sponge, absorb everything you can, all the information that you're getting, even if it may seem absolutely random and untrue to you, because you've never been in, because you probably don't see the world like that. So from all the inputs that you're getting from clients and things like that, all the experiences that your bosses and your superiors have, be a sponge, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to kind of squeeze all of that out and come up with something that works, right? So yeah, and it's really, actually, it's very, very interesting. You get to know people in ways I don't think other professions would allow you to do. The way it kind of exposes you to so many different kinds of people that you need to finally talk to, so your understanding of them becomes a lot deeper.
Okay. Thanks, Maitri, for that. Ram, over to you for the last comments.
Just go join, yeah. Just
What
go
is-
and join. That's it.
Just go and join. Okay. I heard it as just don't join.
No, just go join. Just go join. I'll tell you something interesting, Manoj. A lot of people my age, seniors of mine, after having spent a certain amount of time in advertising, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, okay, or whatever now, 25 years, all of us have, gone and started something else in life. And let me tell you that amongst all the people that I've worked with, I don't know, I really have no count of how many people I've worked with who are all doing something else. Some of them are continuing in advertising, a lot of them are not doing advertising. Every one of them, Manoj, is hugely successful. And that is because I believe the kind of grounding that you get in advertising, the hard work that you put in, the effort that you put in, the kind of positivity that you kind of learn. So this is a great profession for any young person to be in. So if you want to go and start a factory, if you want to start an e-commerce site, you want to start a public speaking class, you want to start a company like ours, just go spend a couple of years in advertising, get that can do, will do, must do kind of feeling, and then go ahead and start your own whatever you want to do. I mean, and you'll really do very well. So just go join. It's a fantastic place.
Just go join is what Ram is saying. So with that, thank you so much, Ram Seshu, for accepting this invite and bringing Maitri and Rolf also along, because this is one interesting panel discussion that we've had, a completely different one from what we've had before. So thank you so much, enlightening a lot of audience in terms of the careers ahead, in terms of what to expect, what not to expect, and a little bit of reality check also for the people who are listening. So thank you so much for coming in. Maitri, thank you so much. Rolf, thank you so much. Ramkumar Seshu, thank you so much. We end the discussion here. I will stop the sharing, and then we can continue. Yes, Ram, you have to say something.
No, just thank you, Manoj, for having us. I must say this has been completely enjoyable for me. I've always looked at Maitri and Rolf as, kids, but this is the first time I'm looking at them in a completely different light. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Maitri. Thank you, Rolf. So I'll stop the